Maya stared at the rankings board in the main hall of the Galactic Defense Academy. Her name sat at the bottom of the list, right where it had been for the past 8 months. Position 200 out of 200 students. The glowing letters seemed to mock her as other students walked past. She pulled her training jacket around her small frame. At 5 feet 4 inches tall, Maya looked tiny compared to her classmates. The academy was home to 12 different alien species, and humans were definitely not the most impressive among them. A shadow fell across her as Al approached. The student stood nearly 9 feet tall, his body covered in crystal-like armor that grew naturally from his skin. His deep blue crystals caught the light as he moved, making soft chiming sounds. "Maya," Al said in his careful English, "you should not worry about the rankings. They do not show everything about a person." Maya managed a weak smile. Al meant well, but his words stung more than helped. She knew he was trying to be kind, but it reminded her that everyone saw her as weak. "Thanks," she said quietly. "I better get to combat training." The training hall buzzed with activity. Maya watched as her classmates showed off abilities that seemed like magic to her human eyes. A student moved so fast she appeared to teleport from one side of the room to the other. Her silver skin seemed to bend light around her, making her hard to see even when she stood still. Near the heavy weapons area, Grok was lifting weights that would crush a human instantly. The student's red skin grew darker as his anger increased his strength. His muscles expanded until he looked like a walking mountain of rage and power. In the corner, 3 students sat in a circle with their eyes closed. Maya knew they were talking to each other with their minds, planning strategies that no one else could hear or understand. Their pale purple skin glowed softly when they used their mental powers. Instructor Thane barked from across the room. The elderly human had been a soldier for 40 years before coming to teach at the academy. His weathered face showed no sympathy as Maya jogged over to him. "You're paired with today," he said, pointing to a student who looked uncomfortable. "Try not to get yourself killed." Maya picked up her practice sword and shield. The weapons felt heavy in her hands, even though they were designed to be light. Approached slowly, his crystal armor already shifting to a defensive position. "I will be gentle," promised. His voice carried the musical tone that all had when they spoke. The sparring match began, and Maya tried her best to keep up, moved with careful, slow strikes that gave her time to block or dodge. Even holding back, his crystal fists hit like hammers. Maya's arms ached after blocking just 3 punches. She tried to counterattack, but her sword bounced harmlessly off his natural armor. Didn't even seem to notice her strikes. After 2 minutes, Instructor Thane called the match. "Better," Thane lied. "Keep working on your footwork." Maya nodded and walked to the equipment rack. She noticed other students watching her with pity in their eyes. That look was worse than anger or mockery. At least anger would mean they saw her as a real opponent. During lunch, Maya sat with the other 2 humans in her class. James Park was ranked 180th, and Sarah Williams held position 175. Both were much better fighters than Maya, but they still struggled compared to their alien classmates. "Did you see the posting for next month's field exercise?" James asked, pushing his food around his plate. "They're sending us to explore some old ruins." Sarah nodded. "At least it's not another combat simulation. I'm getting tired of being used as target practice." Maya stayed quiet. She knew that even on exploration missions, she would probably be assigned to guard duty or equipment watching. The academy instructors never trusted her with important tasks. After lunch came theoretical studies. Maya actually did well in these classes. She understood military history, strategy, and alien cultures better than most students. But when grades were calculated, practical combat scores counted for 70% of the total. Her good marks in theory barely helped her overall ranking. Professor, a elderly with silver skin and kind eyes, taught the afternoon class about ancient civilizations. Today's lesson focused on the first builders, the mysterious race that had disappeared long ago. The first builders created the technology that allows faster-than-light travel, Professor explained. Without their inventions, our galactic alliance would not exist, yet we know almost nothing about them. Maya found herself drawn into the lesson. She loved learning about the past, especially about civilizations that had vanished. There was something romantic about ancient mysteries and lost knowledge. Some scholars believe the first builders did not truly disappear, the professor continued. They think this ancient race evolved beyond physical form and became something greater. A student raised his massive hand. If they were so powerful, why did they leave no weapons or defenses? Every race fights. It is natural. Professor's mental presence touched the minds of his students as he answered. Maya felt the gentle pressure of his telepathic communication, though she couldn't understand the actual thoughts like the other could. Perhaps, he said aloud, they left defenses that we simply cannot recognize. As evening came, Maya returned to her small dormitory room. The walls were covered with star charts and pictures of Earth that her family had sent. She missed home more than she wanted to admit. Her communication device chimed with a message from her parents. The text was cheerful and encouraging, asking about her studies and friends. Maya didn't have the heart to tell them she had no real friends here, only classmates who felt sorry for her. She looked at herself in the mirror. Brown hair, brown eyes, pale skin that sunburned easily under alien suns. Maya looked perfectly ordinary, perfectly human, perfectly weak. She wondered why the academy had even accepted her application. The next morning would bring another day of rankings, another day at the bottom of every list. Maya fell asleep wondering if she would ever be more than the academy's charity case, the human girl who tried hard but would never be good enough. Outside her window, the stars shone down on a galaxy full of powerful beings. None of them knew that among those distant points of light was a small blue world that held secrets older than any of their civilizations. And none of them suspected that the weakest student in the academy carried within her blood the key to mysteries that would shake the foundations of everything they believed about strength and power. The transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Iran. Maya pressed her face against the window and stared down at the dead world below. The planet's surface was covered in red dust and broken rocks. Nothing had lived here for thousands of years. "Attention students," Professor announced over the ship's communication system. His voice sounded like crystal bells ringing. "We are approaching the Nexus ruins. This is one of the most important archaeological sites in the galaxy." Maya gathered her equipment and followed the other students to the exit ramp. The atmosphere outside was breathable but thin. She put on her breathing mask and checked her recording equipment one more time. The ruins stretched across the horizon like a dead city. Broken towers reached toward the gray sky, and strange metal structures dotted the landscape. Everything was covered in the same red dust that coated the planet. "Stay in groups of 5, Instructor Thane ordered. "Do not touch anything without permission. These ruins are older than any of our civilizations." Maya found herself grouped with Al, 2 students named and a female called. As usual, she was the weakest member of the team. They walked through the outer sections of the ruins for several hours. Maya took careful notes about the strange writing carved into stone walls. The symbols looked familiar somehow, but she couldn't understand why. Professor led them deeper into the ruins as the day continued. The broken buildings grew taller and more complex. Some structures seemed to twist in ways that hurt Maya's eyes to look at. The first builders were masters of space and time, the professor explained as they walked. Their technology was far beyond anything we understand today. Moved ahead of the group, her silver skin helping her blend with the shadows between buildings. She called out in her musical language, excitement clear in her voice. What did she find? Asked, her red skin darkening with curiosity. They hurried to catch up with, who was standing in front of a large opening in the ground. Stone steps led down into darkness. The opening was perfectly round and lined with the same strange metal they had seen throughout the ruins. This entrance was hidden until now, Professor said, studying readings on his scanner. The morning sunlight must have triggered some kind of opening mechanism. The professor sent a drone down the steps first. Its lights revealed a long tunnel that opened into a much larger space below. When the drone's scans showed no immediate danger, he led the students down into the underground chamber. Maya gasped when they entered the main room. The chamber was huge, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows far above. The walls were covered in complex patterns that seemed to move in the light from their torches. But the center of the room drew everyone's attention. A raised platform stood in the middle of the chamber, with a single object resting on top of it. The hammer was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its handle was made of dark wood that seemed to absorb light. The head was crafted from metal that shifted colors like oil on water. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing with a soft blue light. "Incredible," Professor whispered. His crystal armor chimed softly as he moved closer to the platform. "This appears to be some kind of weapon, but the energy readings are unlike anything I've seen." Other students gathered around the platform, keeping a careful distance. Maya found herself drawn to the hammer in a way she couldn't explain. Something about it felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream. "The scans show a gravitational field around the weapon," the professor announced, checking his instruments. "It appears to be some kind of security system." Al stepped forward, his natural curiosity overriding caution. "What kind of security?" "The field increases in strength when pressure is applied," Professor explained. "According to these readings, it would require approximately 50,000 gravity units to lift the hammer. No known species could generate that much force." Snorted with amusement. "Everything can be lifted with enough strength. Do not believe in impossible." Before anyone could stop her, the large, red-skinned student stepped onto the platform and grabbed the hammer's handle. Her muscles bulged as she pulled with all her might. The hammer didn't move even slightly. Skin grew darker as her anger increased her strength. Her muscles expanded until she looked twice her normal size. Still, the hammer remained perfectly still on its platform. "Enough," Professor ordered. "Step away before you hurt yourself." Released the handle and stepped back, breathing heavily. Her skin slowly returned to its normal red color as her rage faded. "The gravitational field increased to counter her strength," the professor observed, studying his scanner readings. "It's as if the security system adapts to different threats." Maya continued to stare at the hammer while the others discussed what they had discovered. The blue glow from its symbols seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She felt a strange pulling sensation, as if the weapon was trying to communicate with her. Suddenly, alarms began blaring from their ship's communication system. Professor pressed his hand to his ear, listening to an urgent message. "We must return to the ship immediately," he announced, his voice tight with worry. "Long-range sensors have detected a Devour fleet approaching this system." Maya felt cold fear wash over her. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Devour fleets. They were massive collections of ships that traveled between star systems, destroying all life they found. No one knew where they came from or how to stop them. "How long do we have?" Instructor Thane asked. 18 hours until they reach this planet," the professor replied. "We need to evacuate now." But as the group prepared to leave, Professor stopped and looked back at the hammer. His crystal armor flickered with light as he thought. "Wait," he said slowly. "This weapon, it might be our only hope." He turned to face the students, his alien features serious. The first builders were the most advanced race in galactic history. If they built this weapon, It might be powerful enough to stop the Devour fleet. But no one can lift it, pointed out, her silver skin shimmering with nervousness. Then we must find a way, the professor said firmly. The lives of everyone in this system depend on it. Maya looked at the hammer one last time before they climbed back to the surface. The strange pulling sensation grew stronger as she walked away. Part of her wanted to go back and touch the weapon, but she pushed the feeling aside. She was just a human girl ranked last in her class. What could she possibly do that the strongest beings in the galaxy couldn't? Above them, the sky began to darken as the first ships of the Devour fleet entered the system. Time was running out, and their only weapon lay locked beneath tons of impossible gravitational force. Back at the Academy ship, Professor gathered all 200 students in the main assembly hall. His crystal armor reflected the emergency lighting as he stood before the crowd. "The situation is critical," he announced. "The Devour fleet will reach us in 16 hours. We have found what might be a weapon powerful enough to stop them, but we cannot access it." Murmurs spread through the assembled students. Maya sat in the back row with the other low-ranked humans, listening as the professor explained about the hammer and its impossible gravitational lock. "We will return to the ruins immediately," Professor continued. "Every student will have the chance to attempt lifting the weapon. Perhaps one of you possesses the strength or ability needed." Grok stood up from the front row, his massive frame towering over the other students. "Professor, why do we waste time with weaklings? Send the strongest first." Several other top-ranked students nodded in agreement. Maya felt the familiar sting of being dismissed before even trying. The return journey to the ruins took 2 hours. Maya watched through the ship's windows as dark shapes appeared at the edge of the star system. The Devour fleet was already visible, even at this distance. Underground in the chamber, the hammer waited exactly as they had left it. The blue glow from its symbol seemed brighter now, pulsing faster than before. Professor organized the attempts by combat ranking. "We will start with our highest-rated students and work our way down the list." Grok stepped forward first, cracking his knuckles with sounds like breaking rocks. The massive student was ranked number 1 in the class for good reason. His strength was legendary even among his own people. "Watch and learn," Grok boasted as he approached the platform. He grabbed the hammer's handle with both hands and pulled with all his might. Maya watched his red skin grow darker as his rage built. Anger was their greatest weapon, multiplying their already incredible strength. Grok's muscles expanded until he looked like a living mountain of power. The hammer didn't move. Grok roared with frustration and pulled harder. His skin turned almost black with rage, and the floor cracked under his feet from the force he was generating. Still, the weapon remained perfectly still. "The gravitational field is increasing," Professor reported, checking his scanner. "It's matching his strength exactly." After 5 minutes of useless struggle, Grok finally gave up. He stepped away from the platform, breathing heavily and looking confused. Tried next. The massive student was ranked 3rd in the class and possessed natural armor that could stop laser blasts. He approached the hammer differently, trying to use his crystal body to channel power through the weapon. His blue crystals began to glow brighter as he focused his energy. His entire body became a living conductor, electricity dancing between his crystal plates. He grabbed the hammer and tried to overwhelm the gravitational field with raw power. The result was a shower of sparks as his crystals cracked under the strain. Stumbled backward, his natural armor damaged by his own efforts. "The weapon appears to counter different types of energy," the professor observed. "It's not just resisting force, it's actively defending against each attempt." Tried a completely different approach. The student was ranked 5th and could manipulate light and space around her. She became nearly invisible as she approached the hammer, her silver skin bending reality around her. Instead of trying to overpower the gravitational field, attempted to slip around it. She moved her hands through dimensions that Maya couldn't see, trying to grab the hammer from angles that didn't exist in normal space. For a moment, it looked like she might succeed. Her hands seemed to phase through the air around the weapon, but suddenly, she was thrown backward by an invisible force. Spatial distortion detected, Professor announced. The weapon generated interference patterns that canceled out her dimensional manipulation. More students tried their luck. A group worked together, combining their mental powers to try lifting the hammer with pure thought. The weapon didn't even wobble. 3 students attempted a coordinated assault, moving so fast they became blurs of silver motion. The gravitational field stopped them all without effort. Even some of the instructors tried their hand at the challenge. Master X, a legendary warrior, used combat techniques passed down for generations. The hammer ignored his expertise completely. Maya watched every attempt with growing fascination. She began to notice something that the others seemed to miss. Each time someone tried to lift the weapon, the blue symbols on its surface changed slightly. The pattern was different for each species that touched it. When tried, the symbols showed angular patterns like breaking rocks, for they formed crystal-like shapes, for the symbols bent and twisted like light through water. It was as if the weapon was studying each person who touched it, learning about their biology and abilities, then creating the perfect defense against them. Hours passed, and more than half the class had failed. The emergency updates from the ship became more urgent. The Devour fleet was moving faster than expected, cutting down their remaining time. 12 hours until they reach us, came the latest report. Desperation began to show on every face. Some students tried multiple times, hoping they had missed something in their first attempts. Others worked in groups, thinking combined effort might succeed where individual strength had failed. Nothing worked. Maya found herself standing closer to the platform now, having moved forward as other students gave up and moved away. She studied the hammer carefully, noting details that the others ignored in their rush to try lifting it. The wood of the handle looked familiar somehow. The grain pattern reminded her of trees from Earth, though she knew that was impossible. The metal head caught light in ways that seemed almost organic. Most interesting were the symbols themselves. While they changed pattern for each species that touched the weapon, Maya noticed they always returned to the same basic arrangement when no one was near. That original pattern looked almost like writing she had seen before, though she couldn't remember where. "Maya," a voice said behind her. She turned to find James Park, one of the other human students. His face was pale with fear and exhaustion. "You should try," he said quietly. "We're running out of options." Maya looked around the chamber. Most of the top students had already failed. The few remaining attempts would come from middle-ranked fighters who had little chance of succeeding where the strongest had failed. "I'm ranked last," Maya reminded him. "If Grok couldn't lift it, what makes you think I can?" "I don't know," James admitted. "But something feels different about this whole situation. The weapon doesn't respond to strength or special abilities. Maybe it needs something else." Maya looked at the hammer again. The blue glow seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, just as it had during their first visit. The strange pulling sensation was stronger now, almost impossible to ignore. Around the chamber, her classmates slumped against the walls in defeat. The strongest beings in the galaxy had tried and failed. The Devour fleet grew closer with each passing hour. And at the bottom of the class rankings, a human girl named Maya began to think that maybe, just maybe, everyone was measuring strength in the wrong way. Only 3 students remained who hadn't tried to lift the hammer. Maya was one of them, along with 2 other low-ranked fighters who everyone knew had no chance of success. 10 hours remaining, Professor announced, his crystal armor dim with exhaustion and worry. The Devour fleet has accelerated again. They will be here sooner than we calculated. Punch the stone wall in frustration, leaving cracks in the ancient rock. This is madness. How can a weapon exist that no one can use? Perhaps it was never meant to be used, suggested, his damaged crystals still flickering weakly. Maybe the first builders created it as some kind of test. Maya stepped forward before she could change her mind. The conversation stopped as all eyes turned to her. She could see pity and embarrassment in their faces. Even now, with time running out and hope fading, they thought it was cruel to let the weakest student waste precious minutes on an impossible task. Maya, Instructor Thane said gently, "You don't have to do this. We know you want to help, but—" "I want to try," Maya interrupted, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. Professor looked at his time display and nodded sadly. "Very well, but please be careful. The gravitational field has grown stronger with each attempt." Maya walked toward the platform, her heart beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. The strange pulling sensation was overwhelming now, as if invisible hands were guiding her forward. The blue symbols on the hammer pulsed brighter as she approached. She could hear whispered conversations behind her. Her classmates were being kind, but she caught words like pointless and poor girl, and someone should stop her. Maya reached the edge of the platform and paused. The hammer lay before her, beautiful and impossible. She had watched nearly 200 of the galaxy's strongest beings fail to move it even slightly. But something felt different as she stood there. The blue glow from the symbols wasn't the chaotic, defensive pattern she had seen with other students. Instead, the lights formed steady, welcoming shapes that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her breathing. Maya stepped onto the platform. The moment her feet touched the ancient stone, every symbol on the hammer blazed with brilliant light. The chamber filled with a humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "What's happening?" someone called out behind her. Maya ignored the voices and reached for the hammer's handle. Her hand passed through the gravitational field as if it didn't exist. There was no resistance, no crushing force, no defensive energy. The weapon felt warm and familiar under her fingers, like something she had held many times before. She lifted the hammer effortlessly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Light exploded from every surface in the chamber as ancient systems awakened for the first time in thousands of years. The walls came alive with flowing patterns of energy that raced upward toward the surface. Maya felt a connection open in her mind, like a door that had been locked her entire life suddenly swinging wide. Knowledge flooded through her consciousness, star charts, defensive networks, weapon systems that spanned the galaxy. Behind her, she could hear her classmates shouting in amazement and fear. Professor Scanner was making alarm sounds as it detected energy levels beyond its ability to measure. But Maya barely noticed their reactions. She was experiencing something far more important. Through the hammer, she could sense a vast network of similar devices scattered across hundreds of star systems. Ancient weapons and defensive platforms, all waiting for someone with the right genetic key to activate them. "Impossible," Professor whispered, checking and rechecking his readings. "The gravitational field has completely disappeared. It's as if it was never there." Maya turned to face the assembled students, the hammer glowing in her hands like a star. "It wasn't about strength," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the energized chamber. "The weapon wasn't testing our power. It was scanning our genetics." "Genetics?" Al asked, his crystal armor chiming with confusion. Professor aimed his scanner at Maya and gasped at what he saw. "This cannot be correct. The readings show massive concentrations of first builder genetic markers in her DNA. Nearly 40% of her genome shows clear alien influences." "What does that mean?" demanded. The professor's hands shook as he adjusted his scanner settings. "It means that humans aren't just another evolved species. They carry the genetic legacy of the first builders in their DNA." Maya could feel the truth of his words through her connection with the hammer. Images flowed through her mind, ancient laboratories where the first builders had seeded worlds with their genetic material. Earth had been one of their most carefully prepared experiments, a genetic preserve designed to carry their legacy into the future. That's why the weapon responded to her, the professor continued, his voice filled with awe. The gravitational field wasn't a security system to keep people out. It was a genetic scanner designed to activate only for first builder descendants. Maya raised the hammer above her head, and power flowed through the network she could now sense. Defensive platforms throughout the galaxy began to come online after sleep. Weapons capable of manipulating gravity itself started to charge their energy systems. "The Devour fleet," she said, her voice carrying new authority. "I can stop them." Through the galactic network, Maya could see the approaching ships clearly. They were massive, each one capable of destroying a planet. But the first builders had faced such threats before and built defenses specifically to deal with them. Maya focused her will through the hammer, and across space, ancient weapons responded to her command. Gravitational fields began to form around the Devour fleet, not to destroy the ships but to redirect them. She could have annihilated the entire fleet with a thought, but something in the first builder memories she was accessing suggested a different approach. Instead of violence, Maya chose exile. She used the network to create a gravitational corridor that would push the Devour fleet away from inhabited systems, sending them toward the empty spaces between galaxies where they could harm no one. The fleet tried to resist, but their technology was primitive compared to the first builder systems Maya now controlled. Within minutes, the massive ships were being pushed away from the system, their course locked toward the galactic void. Maya lowered the hammer and looked at her classmates. They stared at her with expressions of wonder and disbelief. The weak human girl who had ranked last in every category was holding a weapon that could reshape the galaxy. "The rankings were wrong," she said simply. "We were measuring the wrong things." Professor approached her carefully, his scanner still detecting energy levels. "That explanation. Maya, do you understand what this means? If humans carry first builder genetics, then your entire species. We're not the newcomers to the galaxy," Maya finished for him. "We're the inheritors of its oldest and most advanced civilization." The chamber filled with the sound of distant rumbling as more ancient systems activated throughout the ruins. The first builders had left behind a galaxy-spanning network of technology, and for the first time in thousands of years, someone with the genetic authority to use it had awakened their sleeping defenses. Maya, ranked last in her class, had just become the most powerful being in the galaxy. News of Maya's discovery spread through the Galactic Alliance faster than light itself. Within hours, ships from every major species were racing toward the Academy. Scientists, military leaders, and government officials all wanted to understand what had happened on the dead world of Iran. Maya stood in the Academy's main briefing room, still holding the ancient hammer. Its blue glow had dimmed but never completely faded, as if the weapon was content to rest in her hands. Around her sat the most important beings in the galaxy, all hanging on her every word. "The genetic tests are confirmed," Professor announced to the assembled crowd. His crystal armor reflected the light from dozens of recording devices. "Humans carry an average of 40% first builder DNA. No other known species exceeds 2%. Admiral, the military commander, leaned forward in his specially reinforced chair. His red skin was pale with shock. "You mean this entire time, we thought humans were the weakest race in the Alliance, but they were actually the direct inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced civilization," Maya finished for him. She was still getting used to the respect in everyone's voices when they spoke to her. Dr. Aura, the Alliance's chief scientist, studied her scanner readings with fascination. "The implications are staggering. If humans can access first builder technology, they have capabilities we can barely imagine. Maya nodded toward James Park and Sarah Williams, who sat nervously at the edge of the room. It's not just me. All humans carry the genetic markers. We tested the other students this morning. The room buzzed with excited conversation. James and Sarah had indeed shown the same genetic patterns as Maya, though neither had achieved the same level of connection with first builder technology. Maya seemed to have the strongest concentration of ancient DNA, but all humans shared the same basic heritage. "This changes everything," said Counselor, the representative. Her purple skin glowed softly as she shared thoughts with other telepathic leaders across the galaxy. "The balance of power in the Alliance doesn't need to change at all," Maya interrupted gently. "The first builders didn't rule through force. They were explorers, scientists, protectors. That's what their technology is designed for." To prove her point, Maya touched her hand to a data tablet and connected it to the first builder network. The device immediately began showing star charts of unexplored regions, locations of resources that could benefit all species, and designs for technologies that could solve energy and hunger problems across the galaxy. "They left us tools, not weapons," Maya explained. "Yes, the defensive systems are powerful, but they're meant to protect everyone, not to give humans control over other species." Admiral looked skeptical. "And we're supposed to trust that humans won't use this power to dominate the galaxy." Maya smiled and gestured toward her former classmates, who were watching the proceedings from the back of the room. "A week ago, these same beings ranked me last in every category. They saw me as weak, useless, barely worth their attention. Do I look like someone who's planning galactic conquest?" The truth was, Maya felt the same as she always had. The hammer had awakened incredible abilities, but it hadn't changed who she was inside. She was still the quiet girl who loved studying ancient history and missed her family on Earth. "The first builders' greatest achievement wasn't their technology," Maya continued. "It was their wisdom. They knew that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination. That's why they seeded their genetics throughout so many worlds. They wanted to ensure that when their time came, there would be others ready to continue their work." Over the following days, everything at the Academy changed. The ranking system was completely reorganized to account for genetic compatibility with first builder technology. Suddenly, the three humans weren't struggling at the bottom of the class. They were the most sought-after students in the galaxy. Maya found herself assigned to a special research team tasked with exploring other first builder sites. Universities across the Alliance offered her full scholarships and research positions. Military leaders wanted her to help design new defensive systems. But perhaps the most dramatic change was in how her former classmates treated her. Grok, the massive who had once boasted about his strength, now approached Maya with genuine respect and curiosity. "I do not understand," he admitted during a quiet moment in the dining hall. "How can someone so small be so powerful?" Maya looked around the room at her classmates, beings who had once her weakness and now studied her every move with fascination. "Maybe power isn't about how much you can lift or how fast you can move. Maybe it's about being connected to something bigger than yourself." Al joined their conversation, his blue crystals chiming softly. "The rankings we used before measured individual combat ability, but the first builder technology requires cooperation, understanding, wisdom. These are not things that show up in sparring matches." "Exactly," Maya agreed. "The Academy taught us to compete against each other, but the first builders succeeded because they worked together." The changes extended far beyond the Academy. Earth, once considered a minor backwater world, suddenly became one of the most important planets in the galaxy. Delegations from every major species requested permission to establish research facilities there. Human colonies that had struggled to survive were suddenly receiving offers of aid and partnership. Maya's parents called her every day, their voices filled with pride and amazement. They had sent their daughter to space hoping she might find a decent career in the Alliance military. Instead, she had become the bridge between humanity and its ancient heritage. "I'm proud of you," her mother said during one call. "Not because of what you can do with that hammer, but because of who you've remained. You haven't let the power change you." Maya smiled as she looked out the window of her new quarters. Her room was larger now, befitting her new status, but she had kept all her old possessions, the star charts, the pictures from home, the simple things that reminded her where she came from. 3 months after the discovery, Maya stood once again in front of the Academy's ranking board. Her name was still there, but now it occupied a very different position. The board showed not just combat rankings, but genetic compatibility scores, technological aptitude ratings, and leadership potential assessments. Maya was now ranked first in the class. But more importantly, the board itself had changed. Instead of promoting competition between species, it now encouraged collaboration. Students were ranked on their ability to work with first builder technology, but also on their capacity to share knowledge and help others. James Park and Sarah Williams had both risen dramatically in the rankings as well. James was now leading a research team studying first builder communications technology. Sarah had discovered a talent for operating their long-range scanning systems. "Ready for another expedition?" Professor asked, approaching Maya with a data pad containing information about their next mission. Maya nodded, adjusting her grip on the hammer that never left her side. They had found 17 more first builder sites in the past month, each containing new technologies that could benefit the entire galaxy. "Where to this time?" she asked. "A system near the galactic core," the professor replied. "Our scans suggest it might contain educational technology, devices that could help all species better understand first builder science." Maya smiled at the irony. A year ago, she had been the student most in need of educational help. Now, she was leading expeditions to discover teaching methods that could advance civilizations. As she walked toward the transport ship, Maya reflected on how completely her life had changed. She was no longer the weak human girl who struggled to keep up with her alien classmates. But she was also not the most powerful being in the galaxy, despite what others might think. She was something more important. She was a bridge between the past and the future, between human potential and first builder wisdom, between what the galaxy had been and what it could become. The rankings had been wrong from the very beginning. They had measured strength when they should have measured connection. They had valued individual power when they should have celebrated cooperation. Maya had been ranked lowest in her class until the day she lifted a hammer that no one else could move. But the real revelation wasn't about her hidden strength. It was about everyone else's hidden potential.